And now joining me is attorney Shaharazad Booth. Attorney Booth, thanks so much for being in studio with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So first question, just tell us about yourself and tell us about your qualifications to serve as the district attorney in Doña Ana County.
So my family's been in the community now for about 20 years. And in that time, I went off to law school, came back. I started as a prosecutor at the 3rd Judicial District Attorney's Office, which is here in Doña Ana County. Then from there, went to Deming and finished my career there as a deputy district attorney. From there, went on as a law clerk at the U.S. Attorney's Office, then opened my own practice where I now do private criminal defense work for the state and federal. I'm a mom. I have an amazing 7-year-old, a wife, daughter, wonderful people in this community, and have had a great time doing it.
Very good. Well, next question. What sort of reform would you like to see within New Mexico's criminal justice system?
So right now we do have certain programs that allow for pre-prosecution diversion and different diversion courts. I would like to see us make better usage of those things so that people are able to get all the benefits that some people can get out of being on probation or having the weight of the criminal justice system, but not necessarily the ramifications. So when a person picks up a felony, you lose the right to vote, you can lose the right to bear arms, but you also can lose the right to even rent a home or pick up student loans. So when we're able to give people all of the benefits that you can get from finally figuring out that there are social services out there for you to have that kind of safety net, then we're able to affect change without unintentionally harming their lives.
I see. And in a similar vein, what do you think of using harm reduction as a way to deal with nonviolent offenders, such as low-level drug offenses, things like that?
I think that's absolutely one of the best ways we can go about doing it. We do need to be cautious to understand that just because there might not be a victim of a crime doesn't mean that they're victimless crimes. So property damage can be just as detrimental to a person as say, some of the violent crimes that we can come across, but they often get sidelined because shoplifting or property damage aren't seen as victim-based crimes. But in the same breath, if you continue to have things taken from you or you continue to have your windows broken, eventually you could be forced to shut down your business and you could be forced to end up closing and maybe even moving out of our community. So we have to give all crimes, victim or not, the same level of priority. But that doesn't mean that necessarily the defendant needs the same level of weight, if you will, that others. That we have to look at those diversion courts that we talked about in order to say, how do we fix whatever it is that you're going through so that you're not continuing to victimize our community.
And Sherry, moving on, if elected, how would you improve collaboration between your office and law enforcement within the community?
One of the easiest ways to do it is, frankly, reaching out. When I went into Deming, one of the biggest things that I found is that the officers said, what does it matter? You're not going to prosecute the cases anyways. And that's kind of the feeling that I'm getting here. And what I had to do while I was there, especially as a deputy, is show them, no, your case matters. And if we were dismissing a case, I sat the officer down and talked to them about why we were dismissing the case, so that they had a buy-in to understand that maybe it was something that happened wrong while they were out on the streets that we can fix from here on out, or maybe there's a reason, a policy issue that we want to try to further, like we talked about, those diversion programs. Maybe this defendant qualifies for that, and that's why we did that. But it really just starts with communication, and you have to be the first person to reach out to say, listen, I don't know what happened before I got here, but I can tell you from here on out, it's about collaboration and working together.
Explain how you would handle a fatal use of force incident involving law enforcement.
So right now we do an investigation that's done with an agency that wasn't involved. So let's say it's the city, so LCPD, that's involved in the shooting. New Mexico State Police or DASO or Doña Ana Sheriff's Department needs to be the one that investigates it. It can't be its own. And then what we need to do is the task force. The task force sits down and evaluates whether or not it's a use of force. But truly, we also need to be honest about the fact that these officers should be in and out of our office every day as a district attorney. And these are officers that we should be building a relationship with. So instead of looking for the pizzazz or the press of saying that I'm going to prosecute or I'm not going to prosecute, whatever the answer may be, we do need to be honest and not be politicians for a moment and say, maybe I need to give this to another office, an entirely different district attorney's office, to evaluate and possibly choose to prosecute at that point.
I see. So what do you think needs to be done to address the backlog of cases in our courts right now?
Part of me running was looking at the systematic failures that are happening at the district attorney's office now. And one of those biggest issues are the lack of staff. So I reached out to experienced prosecutors that are still in this community but prosecuting in neighboring districts. And I asked them, I said, if I win, will you come back? And I have commitments from 6 of them that said, yes, I'll come back with you. So day one, we're starting off fully staffed with a group of prosecutors who have done this before and have been doing this entire time. Those prosecutors can help to evaluate and assess what is going on with our current caseload. From there on out, we need a restructuring of the office. Right now, one attorney does all of the intake and dismissals and plea agreements that happen in this office. We're the second largest jurisdiction in New Mexico. That's truly impossible for one person to do. So we need to restructure how that looks with 2 chief deputies and then a series of deputy district attorneys that are able to do that job and help manage those senior trial attorneys and associate trial attorneys and give them the kind of mentorship that needs for those cases coming through.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that insight. Next question, how would you navigate competency and pretrial detention laws in order to keep dangerous individuals off the streets and off the streets?
So what I would like to do is dedicate one prosecutor to repeat offenders, to look at these cases of people who are repeatedly coming through our system. You have to remember that we as a society voted on this bond reform for a very genuine and beautiful thing. It's that it doesn't matter how much money you make, that shouldn't determine whether or not you sit in custody waiting for your case to go to trial. So we can't fall back into this idea saying that we need to backtrack on that money should determine whether or not you're released. And what we should do instead is what the law says, and that's file motions and present evidence that if a person should not be released, it's because they're a danger to our community or they're a flight risk. And we have to actually follow through with those motions. Right now they're getting filed, but in all the ones that I'm seeing and hearing about, no evidence is actually getting presented. So when the judge is presented with essentially just a motion, but no witnesses, no evidence or anything, of course, society, we want to blame the judge and say, how dare you let them out? But the reality is, that's all the judge could do because they were presented with 0 evidence. And final question, Sherry, what sets you apart from your opponents and what would your appeal to voters be as we approach that June primary? So early votes started now. So hopefully everyone gets out and votes now. And the reason why I am the best candidate for this is because I'm the only one that has deputy prosecution experience. I've run an office before, I can run an office again. And I'm the only one that has defense experience coupled along with it. So I've seen both sides of it. I've both walked a defendant through and seen what can happen to a person whenever they have a felony. I understand that impact that can happen to a family. But I was Prosecutor of the Year for Domestic Violence, Community Hero Award winner for the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. I've sat and made a career out of defending victims of violent crimes and children of violent crimes. And having that experience both in running an office, but in also managing a team of prosecutors and inspiring them to move forward makes me the only fit for this job.
Attorney Booth, thanks so much for being in studio today and answering our questions.
Thank you for having me.
That concludes our interviews with the candidates running in the district attorney race for New Mexico's 3rd Judicial District. Back to you, Anthony.